Apparently moving to Korea once wasn't enough, so I've done it twice. And today I'm gonna tell you the whole story. Grab some snacks, grab a drink, get cozy, and let's get into it. I grew up as a third culture kid in Norway, and I've been always very interested in other countries and cultures. It's just always been a thing for me ever since a young age, and I've been especially interested in Korea. I believe my middle school offered a Chinese language, like Mandarin language class, and I got very interested in East Asian countries. And the more I learned, the more I discovered, and I ended up discovering K-pop when I was like 13 or 14 years old. That was like the start of my obsession with Korea. Well, I wouldn't call it an obsession now, but I was like very interested in Korea. And because I was a first generation immigrant in Norway, I didn't really enjoy my life there, but I didn't want to go back to my home country Lithuania either. So I became very passionate about the idea of moving to Korea. And yes, I was consuming a lot of Korean media like K-pop and K-dramas and like all the variety shows. But even though I was young and very naive, I wasn't thinking that I was going to, step into this K-drama land and everything is magically going to be okay and wonderful. I've been an independent person. I was an independent kid, an independent teenager, so I was pretty realistic and I kind of like prepared what I was going to get myself into. However, I was also very impatient. Everybody told me that I should wait until I graduate high school and try to go on exchange to Korea, like when I'm in university. But to 14-year-old me, that was still too far away. Like, I'm not waiting 5 years. So I made it my life mission to go to Korea once I start high school instead of once I start university. Long story short, I got into a high school in Korea, an international high school, and I ended up going there in 2019 when I was 16. And yes, I did go to Korea alone. I did not go with any like guardian or parent. And I swear it's a whole story on its own on how I made it happen, but I did make it happen, and it took me about like a year or two to make it happen. But basically, I got into a homestay program at this Korean international high school, and I was going to go to Korea and live with a teacher and some other homestay kids. And mind you, at this time, I have never been to Korea before. I've only like read about it and learned about it online, but I've never actually been to Korea. And I wasn't going there for travel. I was moving there for a whole school year. But again, that's a whole nother story. So if you want to hear how I made that happen, just like ask me in the comments. So 16-year-old me, fresh out of middle school, just landed in Korea. And when I tell you that was the happiest I've ever been in my entire life, I am not exaggerating. I don't know what it was, but I just felt so comfortable and I immediately felt so at home. Growing up as a third culture kid, I always had the problem of feeling like I don't belong. But the second I arrived in Korea, I felt like I was at home. The culture, the people, the food, the friends I was making, just everything was just making so much sense, and there was not a single moment where I would feel homesick. Again, I was living with a teacher and a couple of other girls that were also going to the same school as me and doing the homestay program, and I was having a blast being independent, and like we were cooking our own meals, doing our own laundry. Like the teacher was there just to kind of have an eye over us because we were still underage, but it was basically like living in a dorm as a university student, even though we were all around just 16 and 17. However, I didn't live in Seoul at that time. I was living in Incheon or Songdo, which is kind of like an international city in Korea or an international town. It was built not that long ago, I believe in 2014. So it was still very fresh when I was there. A lot of foreigner businessmen and business people go there for work. So there was a big foreigner community there and a lot of like international shops and international restaurants. So it was a little bit different feeling than I would have been living in like actual Seoul or living like in the middle of Korea. Let's just say the city I was staying in was very fancy and very different from your like regular Korean neighborhood. Everything was going amazing and I made up my mind that I want to live in Korea permanently. However, as you may or may not know, in 2020, COVID broke out. Lockdown happened at different times in different countries. However, Korea was close to the place where COVID first broke out. So we had our first lockdown in March of 2020, which was just when the second semester kind of started. Just like every other country, they told us that they're going to put us in a 2-week quarantine. So we were going to do 2 weeks of online school, and during that time, Corona was very scary, and they were like detecting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and more cases just like around the neighborhood that I was staying in. And the school didn't want to take any responsibility responsibility for any of us homestay girls getting sick because we don't have our parents around. So they made a suggestion to either have one of our parents come and take care of us, or we had to go back to our country for like 2 weeks just until COVID comes down. And because none of my family members could afford to come to Korea because they still had to work, and even though the school was going to pay all the expenses for like staying in Korea and we just had to get the plane ticket, it was still not something my parents could afford. And even though I really didn't want to, I ended up going back to Norway for 2 weeks. Even though me really loving it in Korea was a big reason why I didn't want to go back to Norway, another big reason was also that I still had to go to online school, and there's an 8-hour difference between the countries, so I would have to wake up and go to class in the middle of the night. But I was thinking, it's whatever, it's only 2 weeks, let me go to Norway and just wait it out, and then I'll go back to Korea and everything will go back to normal. When I tell you I was being so positive, I didn't even pack a suitcase. I just wore some sweatpants and a hoodie and brought some, underwear and socks and called it a day. Little did I know, or literally anybody else know, the 2-week quarantine was going to turn into a 2 or 3 year quarantine. Long story short, I came back to Norway in March, and then I never ever went back to that school in Korea again. Meanwhile, all of my clothes, all of my shoes, all of my stuff was still back in Korea. But because the lockdown continued, they could not risk having us come back to Korea, and my family didn't have any money to buy tickets of our own to go there and pick up my stuff. The school organized to send our stuff back to us in our original country, and we were to just finish school online like pretty much everybody else did. However, because of the lockdown, all of the delivery and sending services were also very messed up. So they did send all of my things in late March, early April, but I didn't get any of them until Christmas. Can you imagine? Literally all of my things, all of my clothes, everything. That was one of the most depressing moments of my entire life, and I was so mad at the entire world about it. Because what do you mean I was living my dream life one day, and then the next day a world lockdown started, and now I'm stuck back in Norway in my bedroom without a single possession of mine. And I was very into fashion at that time, so to me not having any of my clothes was so heartbreaking, and I could not afford to buy any new clothes either. Anyway, since that moment I realized that I need to go back to school in Norway, and I made it my life mission to go back to Korea as soon as possible. However, Corona stretched out until it was about time for me to graduate, and also I was 1 year behind because things happened, Corona happened, I had to repeat a school year. So I decided to make my main focus getting good grades, studying well, and just preparing to go to university in Korea. And because the high school that I went to was close to one of the Yonsei campuses, it was always kind of my dream to be a Yonsei student. So the second I was able to, I got a part-time job. Actually, I got 3 part-time jobs, and I started saving up money and preparing for my move back to Korea, which was going to happen in like 3 years from then. It was a very hard time of my life, but I was so determined because I've never been as happy as I was when I was living in Korea. And when I was finally about to graduate high school, I was facing some difficulties because in order to apply for university in Korea, you need to have your diploma, and I couldn't get my diploma until after the university application deadline. And that was making me so frustrated because like, what do you mean I've been working for 3 years and now you're pushing my timeline of when I plan to go to Korea even further because I cannot go to university. So what I then did was I decided to start university the next semester instead of the semester that I was supposed to start. And in the free time, I decided to go to a Korean language school. I applied to the language school at Seoul National University, where you can also receive a kind of language trainee visa. So I would still be able to live in Korea. I just had to start university a bit later. And I already spoke quite a lot of Korean when I came to Korea for the second time. And in the language school, they have like 6 levels total. And my speaking at that time was like level 5, but my writing was like level 2. So they just placed me in level 3. And I can't quite remember, but I believe they have like a quarterly system. So I did end up doing level 3 and level 4 before I had to finally start university. I applied to 3 different universities just in case. And there was a moment where I thought I would be going to Korea University because all of my friends at that time were going to Korea University, and I was having some doubts about Yonsei. But then everything just worked out in a way where I just ended up going to Yonsei. Like, I swear the universe had planned it for me, because the whole story of how I delivered the documents to Yonsei and like my interviews and everything, like it was the universe's plan. So I was finally living in Korea. I felt so proud of myself, so fulfilled, and I decided not to live in the dorms because I've always liked having my own space and just, you know, creating a safe space for myself. And I swear I found the cutest apartment ever. It was like this tiny one-room studio slash apartment, and it had the cutest pink accents on the walls and like the doors and everything. And I bought like a pink carpet and everything, and oh my gosh, that was my probably favorite apartment I've ever lived in. I miss her every day. And obviously there were difficulties that I had to face, but I feel like there's difficulties no matter where in the world you live. So despite the difficulties and hardships I was facing while living in Korea, I felt so genuinely happy, and also very unstoppable, because what do you mean I did all of this by myself? And it was a very long and hard journey, but my dream of moving to Korea was what got me through my last years of high school. And like, if there's something that you want to do, there's no excuses. You just have to do it, because believe me, if I made it work, like, you're gonna make it work. I have now lived in Korea for 2 years. However, recently I lost a loved one back in my home country, and I've been having a very difficult time. So I decided to take a semester off to go back to my home country, which I genuinely thought I would never ever do, because living in Korea brought me so much happiness. But I do like to move around, and I know that me going to another country is not permanent. And I still am a student at Yonsei University, so I still have to go back to finish up my studies anyways. I'm just taking a semester off because I needed a little break. And we also live in day and age where planes are accessible enough for you to just get onto one and fly to the other side of the planet, which I'm very grateful for. For the last year, I've been living together with my boyfriend, and we also got a cat in Korea. And I'm actually going back to Korea in a couple of months to pick up my cat, because I couldn't bring him to Europe when we were going to Europe. So I'm actually very excited to be going back to Korea as a little holiday rather than just like moving back there for a third time. But I will be eventually going back to Korea and moving there for the third time, if we're being dramatic like that, because I feel like it's my home now. That's the place where I built my life the most and where I built it independently. And no matter the hardships, living in Korea just makes me very happy. So yeah, that's the story of how I moved to Korea twice.